Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Science of Superpowers. So glad that you're joining us again. We are here with a delightful guest. Quinton Jenkins, aka DJ Nathan Quinn, is here joining us. How are you today, Quinton?
I'm excellent. I'm excellent. And yourself?
Oh, fabulous as well. Thank you, thank you. We're going to jump into the interview here, but a little bit about Quinton first is that he is fabulous. He's wandering the world as an entrepreneur, has had his hands in things like modeling and DJing and dancing, and has gone against the current in so many spaces, but becomes the current in these beautiful ways, and you can feel that from him. And so I'm so excited to share this conversation with you all about becoming the impossible and what happens when we embrace that true creative essence within us and shine and just shine despite all the odds, despite all the obstacles, despite what anybody else wants to say about it, or even what we want to say about it at times, and just choosing to shine. And so Quentin's here today, and we're going to have that chat for a little bit of inspiration about what's possible in your life also. Quentin, we're going to start with a question. What are your superpowers and how are you using them for good?
Well, I believe that I'm coming to understand my true superpowers are the way that I describe myself, that I'm kind, that I approach everyone with kindness as a default, irrespective of what impressions I might have had just from visualizing them. Then I move into civility. Civility to me is paramount. And then a real empathy, I'm understanding that I have a real empathy around the human condition and wellness, joy, and happiness.
Beautiful. And I can attest to the fact that Quentin embodies that. It's not always the case that I get to meet my guests in person. And Quentin I got to meet here in Arizona, and he just is. It's just beautiful. Like the welcoming, the warmth, that's an embodiment. And it's one thing to hold yourself accountable to those sorts of standards, and it's another to do the work, to walk your path, to integrate the lessons, and to have the journey that allows you to embody what you value, to embody who you want to be, so that you don't ever even have to say the words, right? It leads the way, it shines the light. And that's important when we understand how we create, right? How we interact, how we work with each other, how we work with the world, and how we work with this resonant universe that is responding to us, right? It's easy to say, oh, this happened to me, this happened to me, this happened to me. Ultimately, when you understand how the creative process works, we know the universe is responding to us, what we believe we see. I mean, we used to teach this at counter intel agents, folks. Like you cannot just look at what you think of as facts, because we're not sharing realities, right? That became very obvious during the pandemic. We share spaces, but we're all living in our own little reality bubbles. And the brilliance in this is when you can connect in with somebody else and have enough shared resonance that you can then create together or experience together. And that to me is what Quentin really embodied, and why I was so excited to have him on the show. And Quentin, your path has taken you through many, many, many kind of amazing journeys to even be able to say that you're a serial entrepreneur that travels the world and can invest in your own creative projects with your own energy and your time, and make that choice. That's a dream for so many people. Share with us a little bit about that journey. Did you just wake up one day and be like, yeah, of course I can do this, right? Or how did that unfold for you?
Well, um, I think that the origins of possibility were certainly infused into me through my mom and my dad. My dad was a military man, and by no other circumstance than I was born into John and Pearlie's family, or their intentions for their family. I just was the recipient of what their visioning is and what their context was. I mean, we, were stationed in Augsburg, Germany, for the first 4 years of my life, and then the next 3 years we were in Vienna, in Austria, And so it wasn't until I was 7 years old that I came back to America with my family and then got a different lens on what it meant to be just a kid with intent going to school and trying to find my way. And then I was there speaking German on the playground wearing my little lederhosen and clogs and going, yeah,
Yes.
das ist sehr gut, wenn wir mein Freund, wie geht's? And like, you know, some kids were like looking at me crazy, and then they're in the South at the time. Other kids were, I mean, they started screaming names and started,
Mm,
making, certain things that just was like foreign to me. And so I kind of went to the principal's office crying and everything. They sent me home. And when I got home, my mom, I'll never forget, said to me, "Why are you at home? You're supposed to be at school." And I told her what went on. And she said, "Well, the kids were screaming at me and everything like this." She said, "Well, did any of them call you by your name?" And I
mm,
was like, "No, mom," but they were, they didn't call me by my name. They called me everything but my name. And I was just upset. And she
mhm,
said, "Quinton, you're not going to school to win a popularity contest. You're going to school to get an education." She said, "Now, if those people, any of these people, whoever they are, put their hands on you, then you come home to me and you let me know about it. But until then, you're going to have to find a way
mm,
to do what you intend, uh, regardless of what these people are saying. They're not going to stop you from sitting down, doing your lesson." And so from that, it just made me, look and say, beyond why is it that these people are doing that, but what is it in me that that I can be responsible for in
mhm,
terms of getting moving forward. Because my thing was I wanted to be liked. Obviously, I was a precocious little kid and all of this. So that was one of the first times that I realized it really is about what the reason why I was upset. It was because it affected me a certain way. And so
mhm,
out of that, I was like, okay, who am I really? Am I this little German kid? Am I this
mhm,
American kid? Am I just a man of color or a kid of color? What way do I want to start to ask the world to receive me in some light that resonates with what I intended internally? And so through that, I've been able to, and then I happened to be a smart kid. So I was, on these feeding programs, for testing intelligence. They placed me at the college level when we
mhm,
did testing for me to get into the schools there. My mom wasn't happy about the idea of me being far away from her, out of her purview of protection, or my dad. So I had to kind of navigate, the scholastic programs that they were offering me. And then after I, graduated high school early, and I graduated the first uh, uh, higher education, community college early. I did academic place testing, so I didn't have to go the full amount of credits. I was given credit
mhm,
for 32 hours in my first degree. And so you start to see, I was on student senate, and I was, a student writer. So I was testing my opinions. I would do nightclub reviews there. I went to Scottsdale
right.
Community College. So I had an article called Quinton's Corner, QuintonSQUorner. And
Cute.
and I would go, yeah, I would go out to the clubs and review the clubs at the time there, because the Arizona drinking age used to be 19. And so at a very young age, I was able to juxtapose what my opinion of the things that I experienced were
Mhm,
to what the intentions for the people in business had. I mean, they always loved my reviews. They always thought I was cool. And so that gave me the strength to be able to test other ideas
brilliant.
around, I've done very little walk in corporate. I worked in retail for an early part because I got a trade school diploma in fashion merchandising. And I was going to be this guy who made everybody's windows amazing and worked for amazing designers. And ultimately, at first, I thought I was going to uh, go to some fashion house and be the marketing guy to take the brand around the world. And that was the way I used to think. And then, in the summer that year, I got an opportunity to be a part of a musical theater show. They had at the Camelback Inn a little theatrical room there. And so I started to work there and luckily was retained as the cast. So I moved out of our house into the Camelback Inn. So my friends always say, oh yeah, Quinton, you would be the one to move out of your house into a 5-star resort as your first, place to live and your first context.
You weren't living off of ramen noodles, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And so I worked with the show and I lived only on my per diem because, like I said, one of the things that my parents gave me was financial literacy, which I think is something that is so missing in even professionals that I see, and some of the clients that I've worked with or some of the clients that I've read about that I've kind of gleaned that could possibly be my client. I was trying to figure out what things that I could bring to them in terms of my skill sets that would help them to continue to succeed or exceed the success that they'd already achieved. And so financial literacy has always been at the forefront in my own story, whereby I've always lived beneath my means. And in terms of my delivery as a service provider, I've always tried to under promise and over deliver. That was my strategy as well, so that then people could understand that not only, even though I was asking for certain prices that I felt like I was worth, before some of the clients that I was working for felt that was reciprocal value. But luckily, many of them early on who took chances on me around, empowering me to really succeed within their ecosystems, came to tell me, "You're a valued employee. Thank you."
Brilliant.
I always set personal goals for myself based in their ecosystems, because my early thing was I'm going to only do what I have to do until I can finally do exactly what I want to do. And so that was always my mindset along the way. Like, okay, I'm going to work for this person because even though I'm like, for example, I went to work at Bullock's. It was a big box store there in Scottsdale Fashion Square. And I was working in the men's department, living out some of this dream with the fashion merchandising thing, making the mannequins do well, everything. And then I started to gain clientele would come into the store. Well, at that time, they only had it that your employee code only worked in the department to open the cash register that you were employed in. So what would happen is certain clients, and I'll remember one lady that I loved so much, Aquanetta Ross. She was Jack Ross, Lincoln Mercury's wife, and her sons. There was Jack, I believe, and then they had 3 sons, I believe. And so she would always come in and order, like for the cashmere in the winter, she would order a bunch of sweaters, and then she would want to order some vests and the idea that I would have as a guy. She would come to me as a guy because I was coming to work, taking no prisoners. I was doing my construct of what I felt like dudes should look like, right? And so and many times, she would say, "Wow, I like this and I like that." So, and some of it was the merchandise that we had on the floor. So long story short, it played itself out into me going to the store manager because we had something like breakfast with the manager or breakfast with the store head or something like that, whereby you could say what your department head was doing right and wrong in your opinion, and feel like it's an unfiltered way to be able to contextualize your job satisfaction and how they could be a better company in helping you to succeed. more so. And so I said it would be great if I could have access to the shoe department, to the cologne department, to the jewelry department, because once my customer comes and spends time with me, they are requesting, they are saying, can you take, me over to the suit department? Can you, and, they were, like higher commission departments than just the sportswear department that I was working in. Can you take me over to the cologne department? So I, in my next contract, said to them, can I start to, since I can't get to those commission departments, shoes were commissioned, colognes were commissioned, jewelry were commissions, that they wanted a higher level salesperson or something, or more educated, or whatever their criteria was that I didn't meet at the time of my employ. So I got them to just put it into the back end of my deal that if, for example, I had my sales goals were $100,000, if I went over them by after $20,000, I got 40 or 50% of that amount, that that commission.
Nice.
So it was just kind of poetic. After I only worked there for maybe a little bit less than 2 years, because I did this in the first year, and then the first 6 months they had to write me like a $5,000 or $10,000 check, and that was like incredible, and then the next time they're going to have to write me an even bigger check, and so then they were like rethinking, saying, well, we don't know if we can honor that, and so there was always this backpedal.
Right.
And so I was like, okay, well, why is it that if I'm asking you for just this 10% or whatever it was, you've made 90%, okay, above and beyond, well, that's what we're paying you for, Quinton. And I go, no, you're paying me for the numbers that were average in the department. I had a certain level that I couldn't go below. So out of these exercises, so I, of course, went in with that little bonus check, said, okay, I can survive, because I always lived beneath my means. I can survive now for another year, and I don't have to really be bothered about these people, and I can try to navigate the murky waters to see what kind of enterprise I can form for myself. So quickly thereafter, QJ events happened, and I would target clients and say, like I worked with Bobby McGee's, the nightclub. That was a big nightclub whereby one waiter was Superman and another one was whatever, Mickey Mouse, and another one, so it was this theatrical construct. But I would say to them when I went in, I was like, that guy that's Superman really isn't Superman, because I was a big Marvel comic book fan. So I would say, no, this is Superman. And this, and then I had dance skills, so I could show people, a posture or a character building modality by which, and it would help them to make more money, because now they're, like if the person had their dinner come back, I would script them to say, get into that character. Oh no, you didn't like the dessert? Well, you're my kryptonite. I'm gonna have to take it back, to the kitchen, and etc. You're killing me, instead of like, oh, I'm so sorry for the, and I'll take it back to the kitchen. So it was a real 360-degree experience. So it was really brilliant for me, because then I could see people being assisted at, even on that level, to, because they were working to make money. And if I could help them make more money through something as off kilter as this character to develop during their job, because I was asking some people to do, when you're Betty Boop, lean forward, look at the Betty, look at the Betty Boop cartoons,
and work with the energy, right? Like work with that compose, because it seems like early on you were able to follow this thread of resonance, right? Being able to move yourself in alignment with others' desires, motivations, preferences, whatever they might be, and be able to align you with that to create this real collaborative kind of outcome. Sounds like not everyone always saw it, but you were playing with subtle arts at a very early age and producing results, right? It was almost like you had this whole laboratory early on, even in your youth, because you were aware and your parents were encouraging that allowed you the opportunity to play with and manipulate things that a lot of people still remain very unaware about.
Well, but
And so that's a powerful exercise.
for me though, and I agree with what you said, but for me though, more internally, it was always the test case of how disciplined I was willing to be to
Yep.
see whatever I'd intended come true. You know, I
Brilliant.
mean,
Yep.
I
What do
could
you
have.
want more, essentially, the moment or the mission?
That's it. That's it. That's it. I might have, it's a horrible analogy, but I might have won some battles, but I'm not interested in trying to win lose the war. You know,
Right.
I might have incrementally been set back, but
Hmm.
I knew because I'd had enough. After the one person would come back and tell me, Quinton, I had to dial it back a little bit or whatever that they had to
Hmm.
recalibrate. But exactly what you helped me to realize in myself was so beneficial. Um,
Hmm.
and thank you. That to
Fabulous.
me was more valuable
Hmm.
than, oh, hey, the next time I went to try to work with that client, I was asking for this amount of money. And they were saying, well, you have been a value and we can see
Mm.
that, our sales have increased and et cetera through these different modalities. But sometimes they would still misunderstand because, of course, I'm coming in with music and I'm coming in with costume and I'm coming with, I used to, a long time ago, say, like, I've got that old black magic, and
Of
stuff.
course you said that. That's brilliant.
As a way to kind of confront the
Hmm.
cultural tensions and all of this in the largely Eurocentric
Hmm.
enclaves that I was negotiating in. I was oftentimes I would always use that as a selling point. Besides, your team lacks a little bit of diversity, and so since I'm bicultural and bisexual, you're getting like a double,
You get to check two boxes.
quadruple whammy. And I would say it with all
I love it.
candor
Yeah.
so that we can get the quiet part out loud so we can stop, whether some people has ownership in whether they think that they're, classist or, in these buzzwords today, racist or, and I used to say, able to accept with empathy other cultures and other perspectives, right? I
Hmm.
don't think people are inherently just, because we've done this, in America. That's the other thing along the way, Tonya. It's like in America, it's like we are either white or we're black.
Right.
And Isabel Wilkerson, in her wonderful expose called Caste, um, kind of chronicles how we've come to this moment through a system that's mirroring still modern day India or some of the colonial mindsets from years
Right.
gone by. And that was supposed to be anathema to the American experience. We were supposed to be getting away from all of that.
Hmm.
But when all of those Irish and German and Italian and Eurocentric cultures, Spanish and all of these different people, French, came here. Now, at some inflection point, they became white. So now,
Right.
now there was no longer any, and we see it still playing itself out, in my opinion, today, whereby there's this context that you know white people using the current vernacular have kind of now juxtaposed themselves and then now it's the idea that, and mind you, this is saying all white people, and I'm like, no, 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 no,
Hmm.
no,
Right.
no, no.
That
But
amalgamation to the white race really cost all of us, and to varying degrees and in different ways, and certainly with incredibly different results. But it did cost all of us, and I think that's what a lot of us are awakening to now is the realization. People don't voluntarily give up privilege until they recognize the inherent cost of it to them, and the fact that our systems are deconstructing because they have to. Privileged systems always deconstruct, and that was the cost of that amalgamation.
well, the bigger thing is everybody can't understand why certain people want to try to try to raise or white, not whitewash, but erase histories, because then if you're embracing your cultural origins, you have more human empathy, because
That's right.
if you talk to your grandmother and your grandfather as an Irish person in America, or an Asian person, or a Latin person, or whatever like that, if the system can work to reframe your even self identity,
That's right.
then Houston, we really do have a problem. And I go, I'm just not. I've also been self-clear enough to only to realize that people really only have the power that you give them, and that circumstances only have the power that you give them. So
I
that
love that. Well, and I'd love to, because we have just a little bit of time here. One of the other things I would say about you with your superpowers is your commitment to social impact, your commitment to being a voice, your commitment to contribution, in so many different areas, right? In so many different communities, particularly here in the Valley. So let's talk for a minute and share, like, what does it do for you to kind of put that lens of assisting others? Because we've seen this thread throughout your life, and initially it's like finding that with the individuals, but now, given the power that you hold and the privilege that you hold and the positions that you hold, you're able to also have influence in communities and in projects and on boards and coming together with others. And so how did making that switch shift things in your life?
So, you know, I mean, it's just out of what I was saying. It's for me that kind of simply based. I've always tried to say, well, I've always been kind of an arts baby and a creative person. So through fashion, music, and the arts, and through community, John Lennon, or no, Ringo Starr once famously penned the lyric, "I get by with a little help from my friends," and that for me was really assisted, because they even a good parent said it takes a village, right? So I've been always looking around and saying, not only to people that are same oriented or same cultured, but to like-minded. And then that's the way I've come at scenarios whereby, if I can divine that their mission is seated in human evolution, human kindness, human empathy, it's a lean in. Because for me, if you, it's the same work. I used to say a long time ago, when I stopped doing just events and DJing for private clients, or fashion show production work for private clients, it's the same, the amount of logistical effort to do a 6-year-old's birthday party as it is to do the Tempe Mill Avenue Street Fair. You have to still, if you're looking at the macro picture, you still have to make sure people are secure, make sure that the intention thread of what what are they coming to the event for is all protected. Is the staging right? Is the lighting right? Is the sound right? Is the flow right? Have you positioned the walkways with elements that are going to reinforce your visioning? Okay, so that's how I've been able to. And then once you have, that was the thing that I realized early on as well. I have, one of my clients told me this, said, "Quinton, you're kind of ingenious in the way that you can see a vision and then dissect that and bring it into the micro level, into the granular level, and then assign the categories by which the helpers and workers and professionals can be." Because some people just really want to be in their silo. People say, "This is who I am, and this is what I want to do. I don't want to really,
Right.
do much else." So that's the way I've kind of been able to say, "Okay, you're an excellent this, and you're an excellent that. Let me help you in bringing you into this, or can I contextualize how to empower you from this corporate or macro level?" So as a result, then I've gone to, so I figured I can do it for the local business, or I can do it for a municipality, or I
Mhm.
could do it for a government entity.
It's like
Um,
developing a system and then being able to duplicate it and apply it across the board.
that's correct. So,
Fabulous.
being able to scale something is
Mhm.
only tested by the efficacy of your basic model.
That's right. Brilliant.
Okay.
Oh, I love that. And it's such a cool way to look at it because it makes it possible, right? I think a lot of people keep themselves out of the game. They think, well, what do I have to offer? What do I have to contribute when it comes to things like social impact or contributing to even volunteering with a local, nonprofit or whatever, thinking you don't have much to offer. But it's the exact same thing. And Quentin, I think your story today really lends itself beautifully to recognizing that we develop these skills and they evolve, right? No, maybe you shouldn't expect to be able to sit on the board of some nonprofit if you've never even volunteered somewhere, right? But start there and recognize that you're building the capacity, right? You got to be willing to take those steps, and all of your reminders today are what are a great reminder. All of your examples are a great reminder to all of us about what can happen when we just make that choice to have the discipline to hold the vision and take the steps forward. And Quentin, you are just a great example of that. And I so appreciate the work that you've done to be able to hold space for others, to be that space for others, and to shine that light to encourage others to do the same. That's fabulous.
Just like even with women, I mean, some guys are like, oh my goodness, some of the most beautiful women in the world, and this, that, and the other. And I'm like, you're right, I do. I was once a model, but why I'm saying all of that is when we have these questions that are coming into our societal purview around like women's reproductive rights, for example, very contentious issue.
Hmm.
And I'm just using my simple brain to say, like, why isn't it that we're actually talking to women about what women
Think.
and what women what's really meaningful to them? It's their body parts, it's their
Mm,
it's their life. And so I always say, like, as a provocative bottom line, if you don't have female organs, if you don't have an oven, I always say, an oven, then you can't why are you coming to the table to talk about stuff that you don't have any
brilliant.
real internal understanding of? So, and then furthermore, trying to legislate it. And I realize that
That's right.
everybody involved has to be at the table, but it needs to be through the lens of the most affected
That's right.
party on whatever level,
And we're learning so much about the importance of that lens being shaped by the community that's represented in the conversation. And we can do that really beautifully. I mean these are not difficult conversations to navigate. They're just charged. And when we can take it down to the simple elements like you've done so beautifully, it's like, okay, let's just apply logic and then let's move forward together with a real desire to recognize, like, we're not getting out of this without everybody involved. Like what comes next is up to all of us, and we're all voting and we're all sending those messages out. And the more we can have these thoughtful, informed, considerate dialogues about things that really impact all of us and that are sometimes terrifying to talk about, but the more we can diffuse that and recognize these are conversations and we've got to come up with solutions, right? And we can simplify it down to that level using your lenses of kindness and ability to see beyond, what the world might tell us to look for. Quentin, thank you so much for being part of the Superpower Network and coming on the Science of Superpowers and sharing your story and your journey and the step by step and that discipline action. Folks, that is how you get there. And not only that, but then when you get there, you're ready for it, right? You're forged, you're polished, and you get to enjoy the ride so much
and,
more
and, and
when
be
you follow that resonant path.
yeah, and the other thing I would only add is, for me, it's been an exercise in patience. uh,
That's a perfect thing to end on.
there's no onus for you. Some people say, like, well, I want to be this by the time I'm that, by the time I'm
Mm,
30. I want to be, then it's great to have ambition and everything, but I would put more energy into hearing exactly what issues and tests have come up in your
that's right.
life when you
That
put out,
process of becoming, right? Which is
that's right.
the episode, becoming the impossible. So folks, take what Quinton shared here, take what you've learned from this episode and apply it to your own life and figure out what is it that you think is impossible for you. And if that's something that you desire to achieve, then start looking at how you can build toward that. We so appreciate you listening to the Superpower Network and supporting us since 2016, being in the top 1.5% of podcasts globally. We know that that's because of you. And we thank you for that. Until next time, folks, we love you, love each other. Goodbye for now.